Hello and welcome to My Karate, My Life. I'm Chrissie Howard. This podcast is a space for stories, lessons and reflections from a lifetime of karate. I've spent over 4 decades training, teaching and learning, not just how to move but how to grow. And through that time I've come to realise that karate is never just about technique, it's about who you become along the way. In this podcast I'll be sharing personal stories from my journey, the challenges, the doubts, the lessons that have stayed with me and the moments that shaped not only my karate but my life. We'll talk about confidence, about fear, about resilience and about what it really means to keep going even when things feel difficult. Some episodes will be quiet reflections, some will be lessons from the dojo and some will be conversations with others walking their own martial path. This isn't about being the best, it's about showing up, learning and continuing, no matter where you are on your journey. Whether you've trained for years or you've never stepped into a dojo, I hope something here speaks to you. So thank you for being here and I look forward to sharing this journey with you. Hello and welcome to My Karate, My Life. I'm Chrissie Howard and this is episode 7. This podcast is where karate meets life. Through experience, through challenge and through growth. In each episode, I'll be sharing insights from my own journey, woven with psychology, science and philosophy. I'll be closing with dojo reflections, lessons from my own dojo. And today we have a listener question too. Achieving my black belt was a milestone. I dreamt of it possibly since some of my earliest karate lessons. Standing in the line of the dojo as a young student, I would often steal a quiet glance towards the dan grades at the end of the line. They seemed calm, composed, almost untouchable, but also they appeared connected to each other. There was something magnetic about the black belt, not just the colour around their waist, but a quiet confidence they carried. Even before I fully understood karate, I understood symbolism. The black belt represented mastery, strength, discipline and belonging. I longed to stand among them. I wanted to feel how I was perceiving they might be feeling. Human beings are deeply driven by symbols of achievement. Science tells us that the brain is wired to pursue goals and rewards. Each small success releases dopamine, reinforcing motivation and encouraging us to continue striving. A belt system taps directly into this psychology. Every new grade becomes evidence of progress. Proof that effort is leading somewhere meaningful. The black belt sitting at the top of the visible ladder becomes the ultimate symbol of transformation. But philosophy teaches us something deeper. In many traditional martial arts, the black belt was never intended to mean expert. In fact, historically, it often symbolized the opposite, that a student had finally mastered the basics well enough to truly begin learning. In Japanese philosophy, there is a concept of shosin, the beginner's mind. It is the idea that true growth comes from remaining open, humble and willing to learn, no matter how experienced we become. Ironically, the pursuit of black belt often begins with the ego, but earning it properly requires the ego to soften. I was 15 years old when I obtained my black belt in 1988. Looking back now, that memory's still vivid. It's textured and emotionally alive inside me. Some memories fade around the edges over time, but others remain remarkably sharp, almost as if the body itself refuses to let them go. Neuroscience offers an explanation for this. Emotional experiences are often stored more deeply in the brain because of the relationship between the amygdala, the part of the brain heavily involved in emotion, and the hippocampus, which helps form long-term memories. When a moment carries powerful emotion, the brain releases stress hormones and neurotransmitters such as adrenaline and noradrenaline. These chemicals strengthen the encoding process, effectively telling the brain, this matters, remember it. That is why emotionally charged moments can remain so clear decades later. The feeling becomes woven into the memory itself. I can still remember the atmosphere in the dojo that day, the nervous anticipation, the exhaustion in my muscles and my mind, and the overwhelming mixture of relief, pride, disbelief and gratitude when it was over. The grading examiner that day was Aidan Trimble Sensei, a world champion whose reputation, skill, and presence commanded immediate respect. He was calm, focused, and confident. He embodied the spirit of martial arts excellence, while remaining approachable and encouraging to every student he taught. He would later become my coach and mentor, and I would have the privilege of travelling alongside him to Cork Island, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. Experiences that would greatly shape both my martial arts journey and my personal growth. I diverse a little here, but some of the earliest competitions I had entered, Aidan had entered too, and there was always such excitement around him. Anyone connecting with his foot found themselves landing outside of the area. Nobody wanted to be on the end of those kokomis. Such a powerhouse. Often I saw his kicks connecting. Not once, but twice, multiple times. Magnificent. I think one of my favourite, most rehearsed and best applied techniques is Urumawash, and it's probably Aidan Sensei that I have to thank for that. Any squad session he led was very heavy on the legs. Where was I? Oh, the emotions I felt on the day of the black belt grading. My black belt grading acted almost like glue, fixing the experience deep into my mind. Memory is rarely just a recording of events. It is a recording of meaning. Every grading before black belt had taught me something important. Patience during endless repetition. Humility when something didn't quite go right. Focus when distractions threatened to pull me away. But the journey toward black belt demanded more than technical skill. It demanded character. There were moments when I doubted whether I would ever reach that horizon. A lack of confidence slowed me down. Life outside the dojo became heavy at times, and self-doubt crept in during the quiet moments after training. There were days when exhaustion whispered that it would be easier to stop. Yet I kept showing up. Showing up became the lesson that mattered most. Not talent, not perfection, not consistency. Just showing up. Modern neuroscience speaks about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself through repetition and practice. Every time we repeat a movement, whether a stance, kata, or even just a punch, neural pathways strengthen. Over time, discipline becomes embodied. What begins as conscious effort slowly transforms into instinct. Martial arts training literally changes both body and brain. Perhaps this is one of the reasons martial artists become so devoted to the process. Training does not simply teach techniques, it reshapes identity. The black belt, therefore, becomes more than an award. It becomes evidence of endurance, a visible reminder that transformation is possible. And maybe that is why so many people become fixated on obtaining it. Because deep down, people are not really chasing the black belt itself. They're chasing what they believe the belt represents: confidence, respect, control, belonging, strength, and maybe even peace. For some, it's proof that they are no longer the insecure child they once were. For others, it represents surviving hardship, finding discipline, or discovering purpose. The danger, however, is when the symbol becomes more important than the journey. In a traditional dojo culture, a black belt was expected to carry responsibility as much as prestige. The higher the grade, the greater the expectation of humility, self-control, and service to others. A belt could never replace character. In fact, karate has a way of exposing character. Under pressure, ego cracks, pretense fades. The dojo eventually reveals who is willing to persevere when applause disappears. When the day finally arrived and I tied the black belt around my waist for the very first time, the feeling was quieter than I had imagined. There was no sudden transformation, no magical moment when I became complete. Instead, there was gratitude for every setback that had tested me, every instructor who had guided me, and every moment I had refused to quit. At 15 years old, standing proudly with my black belt tied around my waist, I could never have understood how important those years of training would become beyond the dojo walls. At the time, I thought karate was preparing me for gradings, competitions, and physical challenge. I did not yet realise it was preparing me for life itself. Only 6 months after my grading, my then teacher would cross a line that would deeply affect my understanding of trust, leadership, and martial arts. 8 months later came a significant motorbike accident. 10 months later, my first World Karate Championships. Life seemed to accelerate all at once, as though childhood ended in fast motion. Looking back now, I can see that the discipline, resilience, and emotional control forged through karate gave me something solid to stand on during those turbulent years. The dojo had already begun teaching me to endure discomfort, adapt under pressure, and keep moving forward despite fear or uncertainty. Perhaps that is one of the quiet truths of Budo. We think we are training for combat, competitions, or belts, but often without realising it, we are training for heartbreak, setbacks, responsibility, loss, and survival. Training becomes less about learning how to fight others and more about learning how to face ourselves when life becomes difficult. I realised then that the black belt was not proof that I had mastered karate, it was proof that karate had begun to master me. It had taught me patience in frustration, calmness in pressure, resilience in adversity. It had shown me that the true strength is often quiet and that discipline is built not in dramatic moments, but in ordinary days when you train despite fatigue, doubt, or fear. In Budo philosophy, the martial path is not about defeating others. It is about refining the self. The word do means the way, a lifelong journey of cultivation. Technique matters, but spirit matters more. The true purpose of training is not simply to create stronger fighters, but stronger human beings. People capable of courage, compassion, humility, and self-control. Over time, I came to understand that the colour of the belt is far less important than the spirit of the person wearing it. A black belt can fade, it can fray, it can grow old with years of sweat and repetition, and perhaps that is exactly the point. Some say a black belt eventually turns to white again through decades of wear, returning symbolically to the beginning. Whether literally true or not, the philosophy behind this carries wisdom. No matter how experienced we become, we are all still students, still learning, still evolving. The black belt around the waist is only cloth. The real black belt is forged quietly over time, in perseverance, humility, discipline, and the willingness to continue walking the path long after the applause fades. And that, perhaps, is the real horizon. My dojo reflection of the week. Moving to Northumberland a couple of years ago felt like the beginning of an entirely new chapter in my life. Like many people relocating to a new area, there was excitement but also uncertainty. New places can feel beautiful and lonely all at once. A little over a year after arriving, I realised that karate might become more than simply something I taught or practiced. It might become the bridge between myself and the new community around me. And truthfully, I had a simple belief. If people liked karate, there was a good chance I was probably going to like them. Next month marks 1 whole year since I established a dojo in Alnwick. Looking back now, I feel enormously grateful for how warmly the community have received me. What began as maybe a simple, small step into the unknown has steadily grown into something living and thriving. The student base continues to grow, but more importantly, so do the connections between people. From that original dojo, 2 satellite dojos have now emerged, with hopes for a third already quietly taking shape. It is still in the planning stages, but I know it will happen when the time is right. Opportunities have also unfolded in ways I could never have predicted. I've been invited into schools to teach enrichment classes and to run after-school clubs. Watching children discover karate for the first time reminds me of how powerful martial arts can be in shaping confidence, discipline, and self-belief at an early age. Karate does not simply build fighters, it builds people. And when enough people are built with shared values, respect, resilience, patience, encouragement, and humility, something even greater begins to form. Community. A dojo is never just a room where techniques are practiced. Over time, it becomes a place where people support one another through life itself. Friendships are formed, confidence is rebuilt, children find belonging, adults rediscover purpose, quiet individuals find their voice, struggling people find structure. In a world where so many feel disconnected, the dojo can become a rare thing, a genuine tribe. And from healthy communities, opportunities naturally grow, not through force, but through trust. One invitation leads to another, one student tells a friend, a parent sees positive change in their child, schools begin opening doors, communities begin embracing what the dojo represents beyond punching and kicking. The art slowly spreads outward, not because of advertising, but because people feel the value of it. After decades of karate, I find myself reflecting on something deeper still. When I first began training all those years ago, it felt as though karate was taking me by the hand, guiding me, shaping me, supporting me through uncertainty and challenge. The art gave me discipline when I needed structure, confidence when I lacked belief, and resilience when life became difficult. But now, after so many years, the relationship feels different. It almost feels as though karate has slowly let go of my hand, and now instead I take hold of karate's hand. There is responsibility in this realization, a responsibility to preserve the values of the art, to guide others carefully, to create safe places for people to grow, to pass on not only techniques but wisdom, kindness and integrity. Perhaps this part of the deeper cycle of Budo. At first we seek the art for what it can give us, but eventually we begin asking what we can give back to the art itself. Maybe this is one of the greatest privileges of long-term practice, to become not simply a student of karate, but a caretaker of it. At first we seek the art for what it can give us, but eventually we begin asking what can we give back to the art itself. So this week I have a question from Andy Patton, fellow karateka and co-host of the UK Karate podcast. Andy's question to me is, after being independent for so long, what made you decide to join Kanzen Karate England? Thanks, Andy. I'll try and answer this as honestly as I can, but it's not a short response. Becoming independent was never originally part of some long-term plan. At the time, I'd experienced a period of overwhelm and needed to recalibrate and reflect. There was a lot happening outside of karate that demanded a great deal from me, and perhaps I wasn't as transparent about that as I could have been. My decision to leave the HDKI was reactive in many ways. I leapt because of how overwhelmed I felt at the time. It was a poor decision and an emotional response. Nobody else is to blame, only myself. Before that, I'd been happy within the HDKI, and through my years there, I experienced tremendous growth, development and promotion. For that, I will always be genuinely thankful. There are people within the group that I loved and continue to love, and I miss them. As I began to recover and regain clarity, I did ask on a number of occasions to return to the HDKI. Unfortunately, because of what I believe was a misunderstanding somewhere along the line, that return never materialised. So for a while, I continued to walk a solo path. I even considered asking the HDKI one final time, but pride and perhaps fear of hearing no again stopped me. Over time, I realised something important. Karate was never meant to be walked entirely alone. Kanzen Karate England became of interest to me not only because of logistics and opportunity, but because of the ethos they present, and in particular Christine Pullen Sensei. Seeing a senior female leader within karate who carries herself with humility, strength, experience, integrity and genuine passion matter deeply to me. Female leadership at that level is incredibly important. Representation matters, especially for women and girls coming through martial arts. And it was inspiring to see someone leading with both authority and authenticity while still preserving the true spirit of karate. After more than 4 decades in karate, I still believe in growth, evolution, and learning from others. Joining Kanzen Karate England did not feel like giving up my independence. It felt like finding the right community to continue growing within. But ultimately, the decision was never just about me. What mattered most were my students and the future of my dojo. What am I trying to build in Northumberland? What I'm trying to build is something far bigger than myself. Over the years, karate in communities like ours has too often disappeared when the original sensei was no longer there. I don't want that to happen here. My hope is to build something lasting, something that survives long after I am gone. Karate changes lives. It builds confidence, resilience, discipline, belonging, and purpose. It breathes life into individuals and into communities. That is something worth preserving, worth protecting, worth passing on. Being part of a wider community gives my students opportunities, continuity, support, and a future. And for me, that matters more than pride, politics, or standing alone ever could. Hope that's answered your question well, Andy. I'd love to hear from more of you, so please reach out via the socials and I will include them in future episodes. Thanks for listening today. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'd really appreciate your support in helping it grow. You can find My Karate, My Life on Spotify, YouTube and Podbean. If you'd like to connect on social media, you'll find my karate community on Facebook at Gambarukai. And if you have any questions, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. I wish to continue including listener questions in future episodes. Until next time, keep training, keep learning, and most importantly, keep showing up.